So good evening, everyone. Very honored to be here just to speak to you briefly tonight. It's a great opportunity to come together right before Thanksgiving and kind of focus on what's most important, or if I could say, like the face of Thanksgiving. Like Father Sullivan said, married to my beautiful wife, and my son will be 7 weeks old tomorrow. This will be the first time that he's hearing me speak, so pressure is on, and I can't blame anybody else but myself if crying interrupts me. So we'll see how it goes. We just heard the reading of the Last Supper from Matthew's Gospel. And the Last Supper, we know, is a lot of things. It's Jesus' farewell, it's his last meal with his friends, it's his opportunity to institute what's in front of us tonight, which is his presence in the Eucharist. What I want to focus on tonight, though, is how the Eucharist and that Last Supper is Jesus' last will and testimony. It's his deathbed testimony. So in my workings over the years, I've been around several people, about 3 or 4 people, when they're very close to the end of their life. One person actually when they passed, one person within hours of them passing, and 2 people probably the day before they passed. And there's a look that somebody gets in their eyes when they know it's about to be over. There's a look. And I picture myself in that setting with Jesus, like us tonight, in front of him at that Last Supper, and he's got that look in his eyes. It's almost over. The night of the Last Supper, it's less than 24 hours before Jesus will be hanging on the cross. So he knows what's coming, and in the Eucharist, he wants to give us his last message, his last teaching. And that teaching is to tell us who God is. God will be broken for us. God will be poured out for us. He holds nothing back. He spares nothing, and trying to show us how much he loves us. Nothing is held back. The word Eucharist literally means thanksgiving. But in the middle of that word Eucharist is this Greek word charis, C-H-A-R-I-S. The word charis is the Greek word for grace, or gift. So the Christian understanding of grace is that it's unmerited, undeserved. God just pours it upon us like a waterfall that never stops. And he does it for no reason. We're not great people, we're not perfect, we're not necessarily the holiest, but he pours it, he showers it down upon us. On the cross and in the Eucharist is God's epitome, the pinnacle of the mountain, where he says, this is what it means to love. I spare nothing in loving you. When he's up there on the cross, scholars say he's about 10 feet high. So picture the size of a basketball hoop. And he's up high, and what does he say on his literal deathbed? I thirst. I'm broken open. I'm poured open, but I still need to get closer to you. It's like at the end of his life, nothing was good enough. Nothing is enough in showing us his love. About 30 years ago, there was a pretty famous earthquake in Armenia. You might remember it. It was a 6.8 magnitude earthquake, and it killed about tens of thousands of people. It made hundreds of thousands of people homeless for a very long time. But there was a true story that erupted from this horrible, horrible earthquake about this relationship between a father and a son. And the story goes that the father each day would walk his son to school. And on the way to school, they would always talk. But when they got to school, the father would always say the same line. Get him right outside his school doors, and he'd say, son, have a great day. I'll see you later. I love you. I promise you, I will pick you up after school. Every day, same exact thing. The morning of the earthquake, drops his son off to school. He walks him there. He gets there. Same thing. Son, have a great day. I love you. I promise you, I will see you after school. I will come to get you. I'll always be there for you, like any other day. In mid-morning, the earthquake hits. And the earth is flipped upside down. The world of this child and this father are flipped upside down. The father, once he gathers himself at home, realizes what has happened, first thing he thinks about is his son. So he walks in a quick pace with a limp to his son's school. And it's a far walk, so as he's getting closer, he hears more and more sirens, more and more fire trucks, more and more police officers passing by. As he's walking, he looks over the horizon where he can usually see the top of the school, and he sees nothing. And as he gets closer, he hears the cries, the screams of family members, of parents, of siblings, of friends, of cousins, crying out the names of the kids who were in the school. The school was reduced to rubble, disintegrated ash, boulders, rocks. The father made his way up to where the foundation of the school was, and he begins to just kick over rocks, finally to start picking up boulders and picking up rocks one by one for 1 hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, saying nothing. In the 12th hour, parents come to him and say, "Enough, it's over. It's over, please stop." He shakes his head, says nothing, and he picks up the next rock and the next boulder. 17 hours, 19 hours, 24 hours, a group of parents come bigger than the first time and say, "Please, no more." He shakes his head, and he picks up another rock, and he goes on for 27, 33. In the 38th hour, he can hardly move, and he feels like he hears voices underneath a large boulder. So he makes his way over, and he tries to nudge it, and he can't even budge it a little bit. But again, he hears voices. He says, "Am I going crazy?" So with all of his strength and the last bit of his energy, he pushes over the rock, and he falls to the ground on the opposite side. And he looks over on his knees, hands and knees, into a deep ditch. And in that ditch are 4 students. And all he sees when the ash is removed is his son pointing up to him and looking at the students in his class, saying, I told you my dad was going to come for me. I told you that he promised he would always show up. I told you that he'd come. I told you that I would always be with you, that I would spare nothing in coming after you. The story of that father and son is the story of our faith. This divine rescue mission, this pursuit, this I spare nothing, hold back nothing love that no obstacle can impede. God is restless for us, and in the Eucharist, he says, this is what it means to love. I'm always with you. This is personified mostly in Jesus' teachings, probably most famous among them, the prodigal son, which we all know the story. 2 sons, 1 dad. 1 son goes to the dad and says, I want my inheritance now. The inheritance I'll get when you die. This would be the equivalent of me going to my father and saying, I wish you were dead so I could have your money. It's the worst thing you could say to a parent, especially in ancient times. What does the dad do? Gives him everything. The son leaves, spends it all on material things, pleasures, partying. He wastes it all away. He ends up sleeping among pigs, the dirtiest of animals for the Jews. And he says to himself, my dad's servants live better than this. I'm going to go back. I'm going to say, don't forgive me as a son, just forgive me as a servant. And there's this one line that I missed for such a long time. Finally it was revealed to me. The line is this. The line is, the father saw him at a distance, ran after him, embraced him, put a cloak on his finger, a cloak around his shoulders and a ring on his finger, threw him this big party. The line that I always missed is that he saw him at a distance. What does this mean? This means, picture the father every day after the son leaves. He goes to the front of his porch and he's pacing back and forth. He's pacing back and forth saying, I wonder if today's going to be the day. I wonder if he's going to come back. Hoping, wishing that this is the day. Picture him looking off into the horizon, squinting his eyes in desperation, think, is that him? Finally, one day, he sees him, and he runs out to meet him. This is our Christian faith. God says, I spare nothing, I hold nothing back, but I'm always waiting for you. I'm always waiting for you to come back. I never thought about the Eucharist this way. God says, it's not enough for me to create the universe, the millions and billions of stars, the millions and billions of galaxies, this beautiful planet. It's not enough for me to create you and you and you and you and give you a great love and family. It's not enough for me to become an infant, for God to become a baby, to perform miracles, to suffer and die, to rise from the dead. That's not enough for me. God becomes so insignificant. He becomes a child. He becomes so insignificant that he gets nailed to a cross out of mockery. And he becomes even most insignificant by being a piece of bread, which we can hold in our hands and consume, and he becomes a part of us. He becomes so insignificant that he gets locked away in tabernacles. Think about it. I never thought about it like this. God allows himself to be locked away in these gold boxes in churches all over the globe. And what does he do? He paces back and forth, waiting for us. I wonder if today's the day. I wonder if they're going to come back to me today. Well, you have. The Eucharist is like the Father in the story of the prodigal son, pacing back and forth. The Eucharist is like the Father in the story, the true story, who digs for us, throws over every obstacle to get to you and to me. And this is the most amazing, awesome, beautiful, thankful, grateful news ever, that we have a God who says it's not enough. Actually, it's never enough. I'll never love you enough. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be in the Eucharist. And I think that's why the word Eucharist means thanksgiving. And for me, I don't know about you, but for me, even though my son's only 7 weeks old, the thing I worry about the most is the world my son will grow up in. And I become very negative about our country and the globe and financial insecurities and work, family members. I become so frustrated all the time and take things for granted. And maybe tonight can just be, and this Thanksgiving coming up can just be a reminder that if he spares nothing, if he holds back nothing in his pursuit of our hearts, the only thing he's asking for us is to say thank you and to be with him. Remember tonight, in the moments we have left, remember that we have a God who paces back and forth for us. Remember that we have a God that digs for us, that turns over every obstacle, challenge, boulder, rock in his way to get to us. And don't be surprised tonight when he flips over that last boulder and he looks into the ditch that is sometimes our life. And he is the one who says to us, I told you I would always come for you. I'll never leave you alone.